Hello and welcome to the Claret and Blue podcast. Today we're going to get the lowdown on Jadon Sancho from a Chelsea perspective. I'm joined by Bobby Vincent, a Chelsea correspondent who watched all of Sancho's games last year, and he's going to give us his strengths, weaknesses and a prediction for the season on how he thinks Jadon might get on. There's a kind of narrative around Sancho that maybe it didn't quite work, or that Chelsea wanted rid of him and they didn't want to. They paid to cancel the obligation because they didn't want him that much, and all these kind of things. So I'm hoping we can kind of dispel some of that, and you're going to give us some positivity about Jadon Sancho.
The whole paying for the to not buy him, in Chelsea's eyes, it was they didn't pay a loan fee for Sancho, so that was essentially their thinking behind that. So yeah, 5 million loan fee essentially. But his time was, I think it was quite mixed. I know a lot of Chelsea fans didn't particularly like him. He just didn't sort of have the speed, I think, that Chelsea fans like in a winger, which is why they now have a bit of concern about signing Garnacho, because they think the same about him. What we heard from, all the noise coming out of Man United when he signed was, concerns about his attitude and his professionalism and his work ethic. But that was never the case at Chelsea. That was, I've spoken to people close to the club who say that he was, the most professional guy ever. They had no concerns with that. His work ethic was good. He was working under Enzo Maresca. He wouldn't have played otherwise because Maresca doesn't, take well to passengers and teams. The only concern, really, one of the few concerns, was his shooting, because he just didn't really do it very often. And I think there was one press conference where Enzo Maresca said himself that he would like Jadon to shoot more. I think it was the game after that press conference. There was a bit where he was like the edge of the box at Stamford Bridge. I can't remember who it was against, but where he looked like he had an opportunity to shoot, and then he sort of passed it along. And there was a few groans from the Chelsea fans, and I think that would probably stemmed from Maresca's comments a few days prior. But he definitely showed glimpses of what, he's obviously got talent. We've known that since his early Manchester City days at the academy, and going to Dortmund and doing so well there. He showed what he can do, and at times, but it was a bit frustrating. But he was also in a Chelsea team where they tended to play more down the right anyway, and he was on the left, so it probably didn't suit him to show what he can do. But I think there's definitely still a player in there. You can't just go like that, and I do really wish him well at Aston Villa.
A club is waiting to reignite his Dortmund days, pretty much, aren't they, really? And it was a big signing for United. It was a big deal. Chelsea, obviously, another big club for him to go to. He finished in the Champions League and won a trophy, so he's been part of that season. But still, that kind of spark isn't kind of quite been reignited yet, and Villa will hope they're the club to do that. I've had a few different concerns, and I think this signing will split opinion based on the player himself. The way Villa's summer went and the way deadline day went, it was kind of Sancho or nothing, right? So you'd rather have the player than not sign a player at all. So we're behind it, but there'll be plenty of people listening who have concerns over attitude, professionalism, as you've touched on, and his attributes as well. You've mentioned there his shooting. I've seen other bits that he's not quick, that he can't take a man on, can't beat a man. What's he good at, Bobby?
I don't agree with that he can't beat a man.
Okay.
He can. I think he can beat a man. He just hasn't necessarily got. I think he's quicker than what I'm giving him credit for. It sounds like I'm saying he's this really slow player. He's not. He's just. I feel like there was a narrative when he was at Dortmund, which you just touched on, that he was quite a quick player, and I'm not sure. Like, I'm not going to pretend that I watched him week in, week out at Dortmund, so I'm not 100% sure. But I'm not sure if he's lost to the yard of pace or not. But yeah, so I think his dribbling is really good. Like, his technical ability is, up there with the best. Yeah, so he can beat a man. He can take on a man. It's just whether or not he then runs and takes advantage of it, sprints away from him. Again, like I touched on the shooting. His shooting's good, and that's the issue. He scored a worldie against, I think it was Ipswich, when Chelsea came from 2 down at Stamford Bridge. He just had it sort of edge of the box from an angle and just curled it into the top corner. So he can do it. A confidence thing maybe, which seems a bit mad because you watch him play and you think he's one of the most confident players ever with sort of his silky footwork. But he just, for some reason, when it came to the last bit, he'd rather pass it, and sometimes that wasn't the best option. So yeah, his dribbling, I mean, he was very much a system player, and under Maresca as well. Like he likes his wingers to be very wide, and sometimes not even get too involved, but just to hold the width. It's happened to Pedro Neto as well, where they're just not getting too close to the goal. And in Sancho's case, especially, I can't think of many times where he had the ball that close to the goal, which you obviously him himself would want, and then he start to score more. But I do think as a player that I think his passing's good. I think he tries clever passes. Don't always come off, but I think the fact that he's trying them's good. For a loan, from Aston Villa's point of view, for a loan, I'm not 100% sure how much the loan fee is or whatever, but it feels very little risk for Sancho. Obviously he's got big wages, but I think it's definitely it's worth taking a punt, because if you can get him to reignite his Dortmund days, then you've got a serious player there.
Yeah, absolutely, and that'll be what Emery's hoping, and we kind of feel like that's what Emery does. Rashford last year, a good example of a player that's kind of down on the luck and can turn them around a bit. And if Sancho does that, and this time next year he moves to God knows where else because he's played well at Villa, fair enough. Like that, we want to be good now, and if he helps us do that, so be it. This is probably a difficult question to answer, because it's based off Maresca's system more so. But just watching him and his abilities, do you think he's better suited to play off the right and hold that width on the right hand side, or play off the left and cut inside? Because that kind of role of playing off the left and coming in kind of makes sense for Villa, I think.
We only really saw him on the left at Chelsea. I can't really remember a time, I'm sure there was, where he was on the right. But I'd always say left with how I like to watch football, with how, when you're watching your team, I like them to cut in and provide more of a goal threat. He's not bad on his left foot either. It's not, he does use it. It's not like, he's not one of those one-footed wingers who never use it. He can use his left foot, and there are a few times last season where he put some decent crosses in. So yeah, I would say left-hand side, but yeah, I'm not sure about whether or not he'll be given license to drift in under Emery, but I think that may be something that could suit him as well. Like I said, last season he was very much it felt like he was often just hogging the touchline. I mean, it worked for Chelsea, but it almost, in a way, it sacrificed Sancho.
Yeah, that's interesting. I think based off what we've seen so far, Villa aren't playing with any width at all. If anything, it does come from the fullbacks, and you've got Watkins up front and then three behind him they want to all come inside. So I think that suits Sancho. But you need a width elsewhere. So you need, obviously played with Ian Matson at Dortmund as well. If he's bombing on down that left side, Sancho comes inside. Maybe they've got a bit of chemistry together. Like on paper, there's little bits that make you think, oh, that could work. But obviously, we'll wait and see if it does. Again, probably another difficult question to answer, considering Chelsea sign about 300 players every window. But if it could have been sorted that they offered him a contract that he wanted to sign, and it worked out from a financial perspective, do you think Chelsea would have wanted to have kept him based on his performances? I
think if Chelsea could have got him for a decent price in terms of his wages as well, then they probably would have. But it's difficult because I don't think, even though there was this obligation, and I didn't know this at the time, otherwise I'd have reported on it. But I feel from now, it was always Chelsea's plan to do this, unless he had a ridiculous season where they'd have to buy him. But because they didn't have the loan fee, didn't pay the loan fee, then I sort of think it was always their plan to do this, because when you look back at it now, in January, they were considering making a move for Garnacho and Gittins and Matthias Tell, who obviously ended up at Spurs, but the other two ended up at Chelsea in the summer. And yeah, so I think there was always a sort of plan to part ways. There's no doubt in his own way, he did contribute to Chelsea's great season in the end. And, whenever Maresca spoke about him, because the thing with Maresca is he's very honest, and if he's not happy with a player, he will sort of tell us. But he always seemed happy with Sancho. Yeah. He just quite often you could tell he wanted a bit more. Like I said with the shooting thing, I think in a world where they could have got him for, they made financial sense, then they probably would have. But I'm not sure it was ever the plan, even though there was an obligation.
Okay, that's interesting. So it's not that he was terrible at Chelsea and I thought, let's get rid of him as soon as possible.
He wasn't terrible at all. He definitely divided fans, but there was this period through December when all the games come thick and fast, and he was one of Chelsea's best attackers. I think he scored his first goal early December away at Southampton, and then sort of after that he had 3 or 4 games where I think he might have ended up with 3 goals, and one away at Spurs, which was probably one of his best goals. And he was looking like, he was nailed on to start really. And Chelsea were playing at that point 2 or 3 games a week. So he was through that period where where Chelsea were really good as well. You know, they were second and top of the league for quite often.
Yeah.
He was one of Chelsea's best attackers, so he definitely contributed. He just sort of like, I'd say from January to sort of March, he finished the season well as well. Sort of April, May time he was playing well, but sort of January to March he was in and out of the team and wasn't really impacting games. And I think a lot of the narrative largely built on that.
Yeah.
But yeah, like I said, it was mixed. But he definitely wasn't a bad player for Chelsea.
It feels like one of those things that because he's been available from United for however long and no one's taken a punt on him and he's expensive, it feels like, well, he's just no good then. There's no good at all to be had from this deal, or he's a risk in whatever sense. I think attitude and stuff to one side. At Chelsea, he's been good. He's played okay. He's contributed in a good season for them and no attitude problems, and the manager liked him. So there's a lot of things there. It's like, okay, that's fine. Any fitness concerns? Anything like that? Any kind of, he looks like he could break down after a run of games or anything like that?
Not really. I can't think of many. I think he missed a couple with muscular injuries, but that happens. And no, there was nothing like that. The only thing I would say is that he quite often, and I don't think this is any slight on him really, but he quite often didn't. So if he was playing started on the Saturday, he wouldn't start on the Tuesday, but he'd probably come on. But that's also because Chelsea had have a lot of good wingers, and like last season it was Madueke was on the right a lot and Pedro Neto would play on the left, and Pedro Neto arguably Chelsea's best winger, so he had pretty stern competition. So I'm not sure. I wouldn't say any fitness concerns now.
Talk to me about a weakness then, or weaknesses. You've mentioned his lack of conviction to shoot, which he'll fit right in at Villa. The amount of times we get in good positions and it's backwards sideways is so infuriating. Is there anything that's part of his game that is a problem? I'm just thinking, I'm kind of putting two and two together here without watching loads of Sancho. Physicality, maybe. You tend to see lots of Bundesliga players do well and then not translate to the Premier League because of a lack of physicality in that league. Do you think he can cope with the pace and the power and stuff of the Premier League opposition? I
think he can. He's built, and he's not weak by any means. Yeah, I wouldn't say that's an issue. I don't want to repeat myself again, but the main issue for me is sort of decision making and playing the pass at the wrong time or just not shooting. But I think with stuff like that can be coached, and so I don't think that's too much of an issue. I think his work ethic was good, but I feel like there were games you could hear Maresca barking orders at him. So I feel like he had to be told a lot of the time, which is, I guess, natural for an attacking-minded player. But there were quite a few games where you'd hear Jadon's name coming out of his mouth more than others. So, but he always put the effort in. It was almost a case he forgot he had to be doing that, and I guess that was him getting used to the system as well, which will happen at Aston Villa as well.
There's lots of meetings at Villa and really drilled into the detail, so hopefully you can keep up with that.
Yeah, and like I said, I really, really do hope he does well, because I don't know about you, but whenever United sign a promising young player, I never think they'll do well. I
look forward to seeing how they get on after United.
Yeah, so when he went there, I was always a bit like, oh, that's a bold move, but but he hasn't really kicked on since. So I'm hoping he can, because there's obviously a player there, and he's getting to the peak of his career now. So he needs to
still a good age, isn't he? He's 25, I think. This is maybe a winger thing as much as anything, but that can be very frustrating, very hot, very cold. Sometimes look brilliant, sometimes look terrible. Is he a bit of a confidence player, do you think? I know that's a bit of a cliche, but if he's got an arm around him and he's got good teammates around him, and he's a bit, I don't want to say he's going to be the star man at Villa, because that's not the case at all, but more so than he would be at Chelsea, again, because you've got loads of options. Villa don't have that many options in those areas. You've got Rodgers, McGinn, Marlon and Gesson are going to be the players behind Watkins, we think, but Sancho off the left is probably the most likely option, I think, kind of replaces Jacob Ramsey. So he's got that bit of assurance, I'm going to play. The manager wants me. Villa have kind of took a chance on me, for want of a better phrase. Does that give him that belief to go and perform?
I think it should, yeah, because he had those patches at Chelsea. He had 2 purple patches at Chelsea, really. Like you said, he wasn't the main man, but he was part. He knew he was part of the team, but and I think if at Villa he can be, not necessarily the star guy, but one of them, and knows that he'll be hopefully one of the first names on the team sheet, then I'm hoping he can, because he seems like that when you hear him speak as well. I spoke to him in a mix zone last season towards the start of his spell, and he was really interested in what he had to say. He just seemed very self-assured, without coming across too arrogant as well, which I thought was important, because obviously he hadn't had the best of a few years before that. So, but he seemed very confident, and he spoke about the environment at Chelsea and how it was helping him. And I think if you were to ask him, I think he would have enjoyed his time at Chelsea and the work going on there. And I know Enzo Maresca is a very hands-on sort of man manager, so maybe the arm around the shoulder thing will help him, and hopefully Emery can do that.
Yeah, environment is a key thing, isn't it? If he comes to Villa and feels like he's wanted by the fan base and loved by them, how much you read into this, I don't know, but he played with Daniel Marlon and Ian Matson at Dortmund, so he knows them. It's a good group of English lads there as well. Ollie Watkins, Rogers, Harvey Elliott, of course, Mings, Konsa, some good lads like McGinn, Yuri Tielemans, like that have been here and know the club as well. So if you can kind of get yourself in that dressing room, then that kind of should help, I would expect. I'm going to end this little chat, Bobby, with a pointless section, but I'll do it every time we sign somebody new, like a prediction. What kind of player do you expect could we be seeing at Villa here? If I come back to this in May and Bobby said he might score double figures, like, is that going to come true or false? What do you think?
I think he could. I don't want to sit on the fence, so I will give a prediction. I think you'll be getting a good player. I don't think he'll quite reach double figures. I think he'll be flirting with them, sort of 8 or 9. Okay. And that I think. I don't know what, from your point of view, but to me on the outside, that would seem like a good season if he 8 or 9 goals. I think he got 10 assists at Chelsea last year, so he got quite a few assists, and if he can get 8 or 9 goals, similar amount of assists, then that's a hell of a loan spell, I think. Yeah,
I'd absolutely take that. Ollie Watkins is going to get a certain amount of goals, 15-ish. Morgan Rogers got double figures, I think, last year. Now, I'm pretty sure our third top goal scorer was John Duran, and he left in January. The players behind Watkins don't get many. McGinn, Tielemans, Ramsey, who's left now, I think they got 1 or 2 each. So Sancho comes in and gets 8. He's a massive improvement on Leon Bailey, Jacob Ramsey of last season. So that would be absolutely a success, yeah.
Can I ask you a question? Because I was thinking about bringing Sancho into my FPL. I just wasn't sure. I don't know who you've got next, but I don't know whether he'd start.
I don't know. That's what I kind of asked on fitness. Is he ready to start? We play Everton next away. Is he ready to start the first game back after the break? Or Emery signings tend not to go straight into the 11, apart from Pau Torres and Rogers, who got in pretty early. And Daniel Marlon joined in January, and he's only played about 4 games or something. So not everybody gets straight in. He will play his fair share. I'm absolutely convinced, because I think he'll play off the left, and that was Ramsey last year. I
might give it a week then.
Maybe.
But like you said, I think he'll do well.
Yeah, we've got Everton and Sunderland away, and then Fulham at home are the next 3. So I'd like to think he's in this team and contributing by Fulham at least. Yeah. Give him a couple of weeks to get up to speed. Bobby, thank you very much for joining me. It's been a pleasure. I'm sure our audience has learned a lot from this little chat. Thank you very much.
No worries, thank you.
Definitely feel more comfortable about this signing as the days and weeks go by. It is a risk. We know that most signings are, but if Emery can get his arm around his shoulder and he can get some confidence in him, I'm sure there's a good player in there still. Let us know your thoughts on this episode, as always, either in the YouTube comments or on Spotify. You can also leave Apple Podcast reviews. They really help us to develop the content and also share the podcast around as well. Thank you very much for watching or listening to this episode of the Claret Blue Podcast, and we'll see you next week for a Q&A. Bye-bye.